Okay, so just to reiterate there, we've had a discussion about this in class, and the two big ones that we've come up with are a school database, which stores loads of information about you, your name, your age, your behavior record, things like test scores, your contact details, your next of kin's contact details, or maybe like your parent or guardian or whatever. So your phone numbers, all loads of stuff like that. So that's the kind of information they might store. And another example we had was Facebook. And again, to sign up to Facebook, you'll be given things like your email, your name, your date of birth, your maybe your location, a few other bits of details. But of course, one of the things about Facebook is when you start using images and you start doing messages, I think they keep logs of that and they store that information in their database as well. So, and that's why you're able to retrieve all your posts and your photos further down the line if you need to. Okay, so moving on there. The next thing we're looking at here is what's known as a flat file database. Okay, so a flat file database, and this is commonly referred to as a database that contains just one table. One table. So flat file databases are a bit like a spreadsheet. Now the reason I say they're a bit like a spreadsheet, there is a student table. Okay, there is a student table. And now, it doesn't look exactly like that. But what it does, first of all, you won't have this heading in it. But I've only got that in there for the purposes of highlighting this information. So what you will have in your table is you'll have, the table will be called student. And then you'll have things like maybe student number, student name, student date of birth, subjects, tutor contact number. Now, this isn't a brilliant table. We'll see in a moment how we can split this up a bit better to maybe make it a bit easier to understand. But as I say here, a flat file databases, they contain just one table of data, and they're a bit like a spreadsheet, like what you might see in Excel there with kind of rows and columns. But in databases, they're not called rows and columns. Each row is how do I get rid of this fella here? Each row is an entry or record in the database. In this example, the student is a row, a particular student there, Mary Shelley, the first one. That's considered a record in the database. So each row is an entry or record in the database. And you've got, how many more records have you got there? You've got another 5 in total there. They are all considered records. Okay? So, like a row, you might say, they are called records in a database. On the other hand, then, if you go down the way, these are called fields. The columns are referred to as fields. So, each column is an attribute or a field. So, each column is an attribute or a field, and so they are referred to as your fields. And you've got what's known as field names. And the field names there, so the first one is student number, then you've got student name, student date of birth, subjects, tutor contact number. So they are referred to as your field names. Now, this is a flat file database, a single table, and that is it. That's just a single table there. So, data types. And data types, like in programming. What are our data types for Python? You have things like, Luke, what sort of data types do you have in programming? Yeah. What's the one for numbers? Integers, well done. And what's the one for letters and characters and string? Exactly, they're your main data types. Strings, integers, all that kind of stuff. So just like in coding, every field in a database has a specific data type, and different database systems can be a little different, just like different coding languages may have slightly different ways of storing data, and there are dozens of variations which may differ only slightly, but the following is a broadly applicable summary of the main data types. So, here is the main data types you will have. Varchar, which we're going to be doing the thing called Oracle, maybe even tomorrow. It's going to be called Varchar 2. Okay, don't ask me why it's called Varchar 2, but that's, that, you know, as we mentioned there, the different kind of platforms use slightly different names. So Varchar is the one you need to really remember though. It's equivalent to a string in most coding languages. So a varchar, variable length character strings, holds characters including letters, numbers and other special characters. Then you have a number. And a number, as it says in the tin, some database systems will distinguish between different types of number based on whether the field needs to support decimals on a maximum and minimum values. So a number, well, yeah, we may come across that. You may have things like long int and small int, small integer value, long integer value, and based on your memory locations then, you can store more stuff in the long integer values or the small integer values. But just think of number for the moment. A number may be used directly in a calculation, whereas a number stored as a varchar cannot be, a variable character cannot be used without first casting it to a number. And again, that should be quite understandable with programming, that you cannot like do calculations on a string. You need to convert them first to a number if you want to do calculations. So a Boolean, again, this was in programming, a true or false value, often used as a flag, for example, to indicate whether a customer has an active membership or has opted into an email list or similar. So often when you get these questions, sign up to emails, yes or no, that's a Boolean, true or false. That's what's going on there. You tick it, it's true. You don't tick it, it's false. And the final two major data types are date and timestamp. And like, you know, a lot of these make a lot of sense here. There are various ways to store dates and times. Generally, these are stored behind the scenes as the number of days or seconds since some fixed point. So I think that is it. Well, I'm not sure what the actual fixed point in time is. Is it 1970 for some computers? We might have a look at that in a moment. I know you might say, oh, there's times before that, but I think it actually counts back or something. I'm not sure what's going on. So some date-time formats will also hold time zone data. So generally, the display format, so America is different to us. They put the day before the month, don't they? So you've got to be careful of that. Just be very cognizant of it. I'm saying aware of it, that might happen with an American as opposed to us. And the last one here is large objects, referred to as blobs. A binary large object is one of a number of formats of large objects which you can store in a database. And this could be used to store images, audio files, or anything else that doesn't fit into the other data formats. So this is known as a blob, a binary large object, and this is used to store images, audio files, and videos and maybe stuff, you know, going on like that. So task here for you: take 5 minutes to consider the data on the student table. So I'm going to put up the student table again, and I want you to have a look here and say what data type would you use for each, and I want you then to recommend 5 more pieces of data we might want to store on the student table and the appropriate data type for each one. So see you shortly.